On today's episode,
Every one of us has to look in the mirror and decide what are our standards going to be.
The purpose and the vision that you're talking about creates another quality, which is that focus, right?
Yeah.
When you know with absolute clarity where you're going, there's no doubt in your mind what needs to be done, what you need to focus on.
How I show up is in my control. What my effort is in my control.
People come to us wanting to be excellent, but they don't necessarily know how.
solving problems, managing tension, and improving results. It's the Project 1202 Leadership Lab podcast with your host, Project 1202 founder and head coach, Rich Lohman.
All right, well, welcome back to another episode of the Project 1202 Leadership Lab, host Rich Lohman with my partner in crime, Steffani Gerard. Steffani, welcome back to the Leadership Lab.
Thanks, Rich. It's always great to be here.
Yeah, so every now and then, you guys, Steffani and I want to come in and talk about real topics. We have had some amazing podcast participants lately. Ian, had an inspirational story in the last podcast. There were so many others before that, whether it was Bridget, whether it was Barrett. We've had some really cool participants, but I also want to keep this real. I want the podcast and the Leadership Lab to dissect what we're seeing in our coaching relationships, what we're seeing when we're out there helping people. So Steffani, let's just start talking about this conversation of what we're seeing.
Yeah, Rich. So lately we have been going back and forth, the two of us, about some trends that we're really seeing coming out of the groups of clients that we're coaching. And we're feeling compelled to share it with all of our listeners because it's just continuing to grow. It's not stopping, and it's certainly not specific to any one industry or any one person. It seems like everybody's struggling with it. So why don't you open us up? What is the trend that you're seeing?
Well, it's so funny because even my wife and I were talking the other day, and she said, it just seems like everybody's so agitated. And when you start talking about agitated, obviously, we're in a political environment right now, and we're in a divisive social media environment right now. But if we try to dig deeper into it and say, what the heck is going on? There's a lot of people that seem to be, lost and confused and overwhelmed, and it even gets to a state of anxiousness and depression. There's anger out there. So there's a lot of emotions that we're seeing. And, it gets me thinking about what the average person looks like, right? Like, what is average nowadays? And it begins to make us start to question, is that the goal? Are we just shooting for average these days, or are we missing the mark, or do we not shoot for anything? That's what I think I really want us to be able to lean into and talk about a little bit.
Awesome. So as we talk about average, we have looked up the definition of what, Webster says average people are. Rich, something to the effect of it's a hypothetical typical person that represents a larger group of people, whether that be, how you consider they live their life financially. Is the average person in debt?
Right.
Whether it's how they treat their physical body. The average person in the US is overweight, right? So thinking about average, those are the things that come to mind when we talk about average people.
Right. Right. It reminds me of the quote, and I think this became most popular, if I remember this correctly, around 2016. Somebody wrote a book, and I don't remember which book it was, but everybody, I think, has heard the quote because it became almost like cult-like. But hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. right? So like, what are we in right now? There's this cycle that seems to happen in the norms of any society. You go back to, Rome and, way back in the Roman days, but even look at it right now in the global environment that we're in. And it sounds like we're in some really hard times. And if we're in hard times, it came from, weak men and women. And so when we talk about average, I'm not saying that the word weak is right, but what I am saying is, what are the characteristics of people that are average, that their standards have been lowered? What would you say that you're starting to see in people when they show up in the workplace that is average?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the first thing that comes to mind, because I've spent the last 2 weeks talking to people about this, is they're overwhelmed in activity. Like, we as a society, and I'm seeing this in industries, I'm seeing this in parenting, I'm seeing this in coaching, right? We are so overwhelmed ourselves in activity. We're doing everything.
Yeah.
Well, what is the quote? When you do everything, you're jack of all trades, you're a master of nothing.
None. Right.
And when I think about average, you really aren't a master of anything, right? You just try to do everything okay.
Yeah.
So that's the first characteristic I'm seeing, is people are just overwhelmed in activity. You fill in the blank with what activity means to you.
Yeah.
But that is definitely something I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think another thing that I would agree with that, and I think I see, people that are in jobs for the wrong reason. And when you're in a job for the wrong reason, when you're in a job that it's not part of who you are, it's not part of your purpose in life, and it's definitely not part of your passion, then you don't show up excited for it, right? Like, you don't show up with a positive attitude. You don't show up with an energy and a pursuit of something that all of a sudden is above average. So I think that I keep seeing people that want something easy. I got the job, that was the goal, but I don't want to have to work for anything. I don't want to have to overextend myself, because I've already, as you just said, have all these other activities in my life that I need to make sure I get to do. And so I'm overwhelmed already. I can't put energy into the job. So like, that's part of it, is employers are frustrated. I'll tell you a quick story. My daughter got a new job. She trained on Friday, and then first day of her job was on Monday. Now, crazy story, really excited about this. Halfway through the day, she calls me and says, "Dad, I got into medical school," which is absolutely awesome. Ironically,
Amazing. Shout out to Chloe. She's into medical school. We're all proud of her.
Exactly. Michigan's MSU Com. That's what we call it. We're excited about that. But she was at a job where, first day on the job, and she has to approach her employer and say, "I'm so sorry, but I just learned that I have to be at a meeting at 3:30 where they announce that I got into medical school." And she was supposed to work until like 3:15, and she wouldn't make it. She had to go in her scrubs when it was kind of like a business casual. Her roommates that also got in were, dressed to the nines type thing. And here she is in her scrubs. But more importantly, she was also sick. So she's muscling through being on the job for the first day, and she's not feeling well. Then she has to ask to leave early. And then she woke up at 4:30 the next morning, and she said, "Dad, I just had to call in sick." We got her onto some medicine, and antibiotics are helping her. But then the antibiotics were kicking her butt. And come Wednesday morning, she slept through her alarm clock. And she's like petrified, because this is not Chloe. And Chloe doesn't show up late for work. Chloe doesn't call in sick, is kind of her mindset. She has wonderful value system. She gets there, she apologizes. "I'm so sorry." She was only like 10 minutes late because she hurried out the door. But what she learned from the employer was, the person that's supposed to train you isn't here today. And we had 3 other MAs that didn't show up today. So like the standard of the employees as observed by the employers are just hoping that their employees show up these days. That's what
Yeah.
average looks like, is you don't know if they have the character to show up. And if they do show up, you don't know if they have the conviction and passion to want to do the work with an energy, because you're serving someone when you're going to, do a job. If we have people that aren't showing up, or showing up half-assed, or when showing up half-assed, don't love what they do and are going to give minimum effort, that's what I call average these days.
Yeah. Rich, I can resonate with the story. I feel for Chloe because I know that's not Chloe either. It reminds me of one of the topics we were talking about earlier this week, which goes more towards athletics. And for those of you that know me, I try to involve myself in as many forms of basketball as possible. Love coaching. I love running camps. And one of the things that I have experienced is I've experienced winning cultures.
Yeah.
And I've experienced cultures that I came into that were not winning, that needed to be turned.
Right.
And one of those experiences, I remember the upperclassmen saying, and love all of them to this day, I hope you're ready to lose. And it was a joke, but I didn't take it as a joke, because that's certainly not why I agreed to play.
Right.
And now I'm part of a culture that's struggling to win.
Yeah.
And it was a question really I think I had asked or talked to you about, is like how to simplify winning. And that's
Right.
really what I think becoming above average is, to a large degree, is building momentum towards winning, trying to figure out what's the equation to getting those early wins that takes you from being average to being above average. Athletics, service industry, sales, it doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't matter.
Discriminate. Winning applies to everyone.
Right. And that's the problem, is like, I look at it and we have to look in the mirror. That, like, from my perspective, every one of us has to look in the mirror and decide what are our standards going to be. We teach, when we take people through some of our training and some of our programs, we teach that, before you try to do anything, do the activity, you got to know who you are. And if you don't know what you value, and the book that we wrote, the Little Guide to Big Success, show up. What we mean by show up is you show up mentally, physically, emotionally ready for the day. If you're not showing up that way, and if you're not ready to, the second chapter is work hard. That's the value system. Hard work is a performance characteristic. But we try to help people, select that, because if we're not doing those things, those are the controllables. How I show up is in my control. What my effort is in my control. And if we just choose to be better than everybody else around us is not choosing, a good effort, just an average effort. I'm just going to be there. Yeah, so I think it's kind of easy to be above average nowadays because the standard's so damn low.
Yeah. So as you talk about that, qualities of above average people, you started by listing one of them, right? Just showing up ready, mentally,
Yeah.
physically, emotionally. That is obviously a big piece of this. Some other qualities that I think of that we're finding, right? The activity overwhelm and the lack of joy that you talked about, people just taking jobs for the wrong reasons. One of the first things I think about is purpose.
Yeah.
What do you think about purpose when you think about above average people? What are you seeing in those that are most successful around you, or even in yourself?
Yeah. Every person that I can look at, and like, this is how I use social media. I use social media to study successful people. I don't spend a lot of time, trying to see what my high school classmate from, damn near 30 years ago is doing. I would love to, to know that they're living a great life, so I could study and try to figure out what makes it great. That's why we do the podcast, is to, talk about the leadership growth journey that so many people have gone through. So I try to study people that are successful, and they have a vision, right? Like, they know what their purpose is in life, and they can break it into, key components. I know mine every day I read my vision. That's what above average and excellence looks like, is that you're really getting into, how you want to live your life, because there's three types of people. The person that doesn't know they want to live their life, and they're confused. They're, flitting around from here to there, not knowing what they want to do. Then there's a type of person that might know what they want to do, but they don't have the character to do it. That's the person that's frustrated. I know what I want, but man, I'm lazy. Or I know what I want, but man, I don't have good follow through. That's just a frustrated person. But a person that knows what they want, they have a vision, they have an image of success in their mind. They've defined success at the end of a journey and they're pursuing it. That's what a successful, above average, or excellent, type of person is doing right now.
Yeah. And I think that the purpose and the vision that you're talking about creates another quality, which is that focus, right?
Yeah.
When you know with absolute clarity where you're going, there's no doubt in your mind what needs to be done, what you need to focus on. It creates the focus that drives you into what I would say is the fourth, which is responsibility.
Yeah.
From a responsibility perspective, what do you think is the biggest challenge these days? Social media might be one of them, right? To remain responsible to the focus required on your purpose and vision.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question, Stephanie. I immediately think nothing's given, everything is earned. And I think that entitlement, is the other extreme to that, where we want everything to be given and we want it to be given before we earn it. So I think when it comes to responsibilities, accept responsibility for yourself in your actions, and make sure that you realize, an entitled person that doesn't earn anything is going to be average. They're going to complain. They're going to become a victim mindset because they don't get the rewards. But the person that accepts responsibility, I do think then, understands that there's going to be an effort that needs to be put in. Man, I can remember back to my youthful days. I don't know whether this was, and you can remember yours too. I don't remember if it was something that was taught to me or if it was just something because I had so much passion, but nobody had to ask me to practice. I loved practice. Nobody had to ask me to, give the best effort because I loved competing. I wanted to beat even my own teammates if it was just a sprint down the ice when I was playing hockey. So there was this energy that I would put forth, no matter when it was, how it was, that I think helped me stay above average, or in some cases, there was excellence there. Maybe in its own raw form in my youth. But I think that's what we're talking about when you say accept responsibility, is you got to earn everything and you got to show up every day earning it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you're talking about is that intrinsic motivation or that drive, right?
Yeah.
Like above average people just have, there's maybe an it factor, if you've heard it said that way, like you just have it.
Yeah.
It comes down to that drive to do whatever they set their mind to.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, intrinsic motivation and above average people. I'll flip the script on you and ask you a question. Do you think excellence can be taught?
Well, Rich, that is a great question. I'm going to say yes, but it's a two-way street. So if people are coachable, I think teaching excellence starts with understanding, helping people to understand what their purpose and their values are. Because what I'm finding in coaching is people come to us wanting to be excellent, but they don't necessarily know how. They
Right.
have the right motivation, they have the wrong tools, they
Right.
maybe have the wrong roadmap. So although it starts with them, I can't force anybody to want to be excellent. That's where it's a two-way street of like the desire has to start with them.
Right.
And then they take that desire and say, I don't have all the right answers. I don't know how. Teach me.
Right.
Just like your first hockey coach, my
Right.
first basketball coach. You know what I'm saying? Like there has to be that desire and then that coachable, that coachable way of life that says like, I trust you to give me something I don't have that I need to get
Right.
me there.
Yeah. So when you were saying that, I was thinking, so there goes, more characteristics that have to be inside of us if we want to be above average. And I think it's, that humble humility, right? Like I don't have the answers. Otherwise I'd have the outcome and the results already. So I really do think that, a above average person remains grounded and humble. And I think that's what that helps them pursue hard work, right? Like everything has to be earned every day. But when I asked that question, the word that was stuck in my mind, the word that is always stuck in my mind every time I engage with another human being and I am coaching them, is I try to assess what I think their potential is. Because so many people have been, we talk about the stick person in with all of our clients, and the stick person is basically a process of how we've learned our life, how we see things, therefore how we feel about things, feel about ourselves, our self-image, our habits, our beliefs, and it creates the actions and reactions that create results. I think a lot of people have been beat down by bad mentorship, bad coaching, bad parenting, bad teachers, so that they don't believe in themselves. And yet you and I can take people and say, I believe in your potential. But we've got to rewire everything, is what you were saying, to help you get to your potential. We've got to help you start at the basics of what is your vision. And some people don't know how to do that. And that's where the coaching meets them. What are your values? You don't know how to do that because nobody's ever sat down and done a values driven, characteristics exercise with you. You don't know what habits you're trying to create. But once people start doing that, I think it unlocks them to move forward. And those are some of my favorite success stories when we do coaching, is people that might have come saying, I want to learn, but I don't know how to do this. And then you see them 1, 2, 3, 4 years later, and they have achieved so much of what their potential was that they didn't even know.
Yeah. One of the things you said earlier this week with one of our group clients, we flipped the script on and we were talking about worthiness. And it goes back to the self-image question of, am I worthy of something, right? Am I worthy of all these sales? No. Are these sales worthy of you?
Right.
And challenging them to see beyond their own blind spots of what they believe their worthiness is, which is some of the most fun we get to have in our job. So as we think about, we've moved through qualities, we've talked a little bit deeper into some of the challenges with qualities. We've touched on values. We've talked about valuing being humble, right? The value of humility, the value of determination, the value of growth and achievement. I think these are all imperative to build upon the qualities of what an above average, hopefully excellent, right? We're building towards excellent person looks like. What does it look like in action then, Rich? Like what is an above average person doing day to day that is different than the average?
Yeah, I believe that the above average person lives in ritual. And again, that's not a spiritual terminology, but there are rituals that they repeat daily that point them to that success. I believe that you look at what your vision is, your success image is every day. That same group client, that's one of the things that I asked each of them to a person. We were talking about the results that they were generating, and we could see that none of them were generating the results that they aspire or set a target for. And I said, let's start at the beginning. Who is reading their success image each day? And everybody said no to a person. And I said, that's where you start, because that primes the pump. But that's the ritual, that's the habit that is at the beginning, is that you read that each day. When you read that, you can look at your calendar. If your success image is right, you can look at your calendar and you can look at your activities as any human. I don't care if you're in the service industry. I don't care if you're in the fitness industry, any industry. You can look at your parenting and say, this is my image of success. This is the day that I have, and these are the activities I can choose from. And you can start making right choices. I saw this earlier today. I have to share it. Um, Effort is a decision. Mindset is a decision. Excellence is a decision. Consistency is a decision. There are no shortcuts to success. So, like every one of those, you have to decide that each day. That's the ritual. What kind of effort am I going to give to this today? What are the right activities that I'm going to give to this today? How is this going to look each day? Some days they're going to be wonderful. And some days, pardon my French, but we are going to get our asses handed to us. We put our head on the pillow, we let go of the day, and we get up the next day and we start the ritual over again because we already know that the image of success in our mind is what we're still chasing. So I think it's a daily routine. You got inspired. Tell the listeners about the inspiration that you found out of John Maxwell's book Today Matters.
Yeah. So thinking about it, it's the drive towards consistent excellence. If you wake up every day and doing what you said, you have the habits and the rituals laid out, but your mindset, which is a choice, is you're going to strive towards consistent excellence in everything you do, which does force people to have to focus and say no to things, just like we're so good at saying yes to everything. It means we're going to start saying no to the right things at the right time so we can achieve consistent excellence. The other thing that stood out to me is above average people think differently. And that I think goes back to the value of growth. They're always feeding their minds. They're always challenging their thinking. That's what keeps people moving forward. That forward thinking it's going to push their why, right? It's going to push their purpose statement. It's going to push their vision, but that's what keeps them above average is that push.
It's interesting when we were, over the last 5 years, I've had the honor and privilege of teaching over 225 lessons with Lee, with Dave Rudine on, just values and qualities, that are of excellence, of leadership, of success. And when you brought in that thinking, it was mind blowing to me when I had to learn about thinking to teach about thinking. And did you know that there are, 12 different ways that you could think? You could think in macro or big picture, but you could think in micro or details. But if you are going after something that you're supposed to be thinking in details and you're thinking in macro, then you're probably going to look average because you don't know how to think, right? Like that's what people I think are missing. And so our passport to growth, that was probably some of the most insightful stuff that I got to go through is starting to challenge, how am I thinking before I started thinking? Am I thinking the right way that is going to get me the excellent outcome that I'm shooting for? I don't know that people know how to do that. That's why the Passport to Growth is a product that we offer so that people can start doing those kind of things, because the growth, changing your thinking, but to the right thinking, helps people be more successful. And that's what excellence is about. That's what above average is about. That's what getting away from the pack is all about, of the people that just don't know how to do it.
Yeah. And these principles we're talking about today, they're applicable to anything in life, right? This is the game plan to life to be successful in anything you do. If you follow these steps, you follow these qualities, you follow these values, you take action on these areas, you're gonna achieve success. But so often you just want to skip all of it. You want to be the overnight success, which leaves us feeling a little bit below average and where we started, agitated, anxious, depressed, maybe even angry. So I think today, we accomplished what we set out to accomplish, which is really putting a very clear puzzle together of what it takes to move from average to above average. Rich, any last thoughts that you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah. One simple thought. If you can look around you and you're blending in, then you're probably just, allowing the culture and the people around you, the characteristics, the traits that they have to be your traits. And if that becomes average, that you then sense that something's not right, the only guarantee that tomorrow is going to be better is growth. That you start a growth process. It's as simple as that. That if you want to rise above the pack, I'll give you three real simple things. You want to be better than everybody else. Show up to your job, show up to your practice, show up to your school, show up to your events earlier than everybody else. Be prepared. Do more than people are willing to do right now, because people are not willing to do much. They just want to be given much, right? So be willing to do more and help other people around you as you're doing more. You see somebody that's struggling, help them, because that's above average. Right now, most people look at everybody else and point a finger and say, oh, look at how bad that person's struggling. No, if you want to be above average, then help them. But you show up early, you do more, and you help more. Those three things, and I'm pretty sure that you're going to rise above, what everybody else is doing and start to stand out in the tribe. And I think that's what we need to do. It's going to take people to stand out, not to blend in. Blending in is going to make everybody average and it water it all down. So it's going to take growth. But those are three simple things that people can do on a daily basis, and they'll be winning.
Rich, you're making me have another thought here as you're saying that, and I love the individual application. I know we also have leaders that are listening that are leading other people, whether it's in a corporate setting, an entrepreneur setting, a community setting.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of leaders that are struggling with underperformance. We know it because it's often who we end up coaching. And I would say to them, right, similar to the paths you've taken or the steps you just encourage them to take, if you're struggling with underperformance, start by looking in the mirror. Yeah. Start by really evaluating where your own performance is at, where your own standards are at, and what actions you're taking. Because often what you realize is you're setting the tone, right? You're setting the bar. And sometimes when we don't check ourselves enough, we end up setting the bar too low for everyone else and they end up following. So the first step in what we believe in is modeling the leadership, modeling the behaviors that are required to succeed. And I think for every leader that's listening out there right now that is struggling with underperformance, that would be the recommended step that I would encourage them to take, is just look in the mirror and figure out how you might need to break the mold on the performance challenge of the average challenge for your team.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like, every leader should look in the mirror before they look at everybody else. When they look at everybody else, the second thing I would ask them is to just go to those people individually. You have to slow down when you go to people that you think are performing average. You have to slow down. You have to meet them and say, why are you here? First question I would ask is, why are you here? Why do you want to work here? And see if they have a compelling answer. What do you want to get from working here? And if you can figure out what they want to get, what they want to achieve, I think that's amazing. You figure that out, you can then ask yourself, is what they want to get from working here, is their why and their what in alignment with what the organization's objectives are? If it is, that's awesome. The fourth question then is, how can I help you? That's what a leader needs to slow down and figure out how to do, is ask somebody questions. If the answers aren't right, it might not be a good fit, because that person may not have the purpose, the conviction, the passion to be there. But man, look in the mirror and then slow down and ask people those questions. I think that's how you get people to start saying, I don't want to be average. I want to excel. I want to be above average. And this is how you can help me.
I love it. That's a great wrap up. I think that's a good closure for today's Leadership Lab. Yeah. And if people want to learn more, Rich, where should they go?
Project1202.com. They should just come visit us. Yeah, obviously they could email Steffani at Project1202, Rich at Project1202, but you go to the website. We have the tools, we have the resources to be able to meet you wherever you're at and help you define what your game plan is. Sometimes it's not about, them hiring us as coaches. It's just, here's the tool and the resource that you need. Other times it's, yes, it sounds like you need a little bit of help, and we're going to dig in with you, and we're going to spend 6 months, 12 months, 18 months with you. It just depends on where they're at and where their vision is. But it starts with the taking of action. And our action is just simply go to the website and start to, click the buttons and use the tools that we give them.
Yeah, awesome. There is a great opportunity for a free tool right now. If you go to our website for a limited time, while supplies last, we have free copies of the Little Guide to Big Success. You cover the shipping, we'll do the rest, and we'll get you a great tool to start that way of living and start changing your thinking through the book. So go to our website, check it out there. And Rich, it's been great to be here with you today.
Yeah, thank you, Steffani. And for the listeners, again, take the action. We encourage you, rise above the pack, become above average, aspire to excellence. You have a lot of potential, and we'll bring you another interview in the Leadership Lab coming to you soon.
This has been the Project 1202 Leadership Lab podcast. In each episode, we tackle issues facing today's leaders. Follow us on your favorite podcast app to be notified of new episodes. To learn more about professional coaching, visit us on the web at project1202.com. Thanks for joining us.